dare you speak to my mother that way?
We were just discussing the situation.
She's my mother. Show her respect. It's all right, dear.
I never told my daughter about my $50,000 monthly income, even though she watched me live the most ordinary life imaginable. When she invited me to meet her fiancé's family at an upscale dinner party, I made a decision that would change everything. I would pretend to be struggling financially, a simple woman barely making ends meet. I wanted to see their true colors, how they'd treat someone they considered beneath them. What happened that evening shattered illusions and exposed truths no one expected. Let me tell you how I got there and, more importantly, who I really am. My name is Diana, and my daughter Sarah, now 32, never knew the complete truth about her mother. To her, I was just someone who worked long hours at the office, came home exhausted, cooked simple meals, and lived modestly. Nothing remarkable. Nothing worth discussing. She never knew I earned $50,000 every month as a senior financial director at an international investment firm. For nearly 25 years, I've been making decisions that moved markets, managing portfolios worth hundreds of millions, leading teams across multiple continents. But I never mentioned it. Why would I? Money was never something I wore like a badge of honor. I grew up learning that true dignity comes from within. That class isn't purchased, it's carried. So I kept my truth private. I lived in the same comfortable but modest townhouse for 2 decades. I drove a practical sedan until it needed replacing. I shopped at regular stores, cooked at home, and invested quietly. I became wealthy in silence, because real power doesn't announce itself. Real power observes. And I was observing carefully when Sarah called me that Thursday evening. Her voice had a particular tension I recognized from her childhood. The sound of someone worried about appearances. Mom, I need to ask you something important. David's parents want to meet you. They're hosting a dinner party this Saturday at their estate. Well, it's formal. Can you come? Something in her tone bothered me. Have you told them about me? I asked calmly. There was a pause. Then Sarah spoke quickly, nervously. I told them you work in finance, that you live alone, that you're independent, that you keep things simple. There was that word. Simple. As if my entire existence could be reduced to that dismissive adjective. As if I were something to apologize for. All right, Sarah. I'll be there, I said quietly. After hanging up, I looked around my living room. Comfortable furniture, nothing ostentatious. Walls with family photos instead of expensive art. A normal television. Everything functional. Nothing for show. And in that moment I made my decision. If Sarah thought I was struggling, if David's family was prepared to judge me, then I would give them exactly what they expected. I would become the woman they assumed I was. Barely surviving, unsophisticated, financially vulnerable. I wanted to experience firsthand how they treated someone with nothing. Because my instincts told me what was coming, and my instincts were rarely wrong. Saturday arrived. I dressed deliberately in the plainest outfit I owned. A shapeless beige dress from a discount store, worn flats, no jewelry except my late mother's simple wedding band. I carried a faded canvas bag and pulled my hair into a careless bun. Looking in the mirror, I saw a woman who looked defeated by circumstance. Forgettable. Perfect. I took a rideshare to the address Sarah had given me. As we drove through increasingly affluent neighborhoods, I felt a mixture of anticipation and sadness. Anticipation because I knew I was about to see something revealing. Sadness because part of me hoped I was wrong about what awaited me. The car pulled up to a mansion. Not just a large house. A genuine estate with manicured grounds, a circular driveway, and a valet service. I stepped out, paid the driver, and took a deep breath before walking toward the entrance. A uniformed attendant opened the door. Inside, everything gleamed. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that belonged in museums. And there was Sarah, wearing an elegant cocktail dress, her hair professionally styled. She looked beautiful, polished, and when she saw me, her expression shifted to barely concealed dismay. "Mom," she said, kissing my cheek quickly. "You're here." "Of course, sweetheart. I wouldn't miss meeting David's family." David appeared, tall and confident in an expensive suit. "Mrs. Chun, wonderful to finally meet you." His handshake was firm, but his eyes had already assessed and dismissed me. "Please come meet my parents," he said, guiding us toward a spacious living room where 2 people stood waiting like monarchs receiving subjects. Catherine, David's mother, wore a designer gown that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her jewelry caught the light with every movement. Diamonds, emeralds, gold. She was impeccably maintained, the kind of beauty that requires significant investment. Beside her stood Richard, her husband, in a custom suit, projecting wealth and authority with every breath. "Mother, father, this is Sarah's mother, Diana-chan," David announced. Catherine extended a hand limply, her eyes sweeping over my discount dress, worn shoes, and canvas bag with undisguised disappointment. "How nice to meet you." Her smile never reached her eyes. Richard's handshake was perfunctory. "Charmed." We moved to the dining room, where a table was set for 8 with more silverware and crystal than seemed necessary. I was seated at the far end, almost as an afterthought, while Sarah and David took center positions near his parents. A server appeared with leather-bound menus. Everything was in French. I opened mine and pretended to be confused, overwhelmed. Catherine noticed immediately. "Do you need assistance with the menu, Diana?" Her voice dripped with false concern. "Yes, please," I said softly. "I don't understand these terms." She sighed just audibly enough. "Perhaps something simple would be best. We don't want to be too adventurous." She ordered for me without asking my preferences, the least expensive option, naturally. As appetizers arrived, Catherine began talking. About their recent trip to Monaco. About their villa in Tuscany. About the charity gala they'd hosted that raised $500,000. Every sentence was a calculated display of wealth, each anecdote designed to establish hierarchy. "You know, Diana," Catherine said, turning her attention to me, "David tells us you work in finance. What exactly do you do?" "I work in an office," I replied, lowering my gaze. "Administrative tasks mostly. Filing paperwork, supporting the executives." Catherine and Richard exchanged a look. "Administrative work," Catherine repeated. "Well, all honest work has value, doesn't it?" Her tone suggested she didn't believe her own words. "What about your living situation?" Richard asked. "Sarah mentioned you live alone?" "Yes, in a small townhouse. It's enough for me." "How modest," Catherine said. "And your salary? Does it provide adequately?" The trap was closing. "I manage," I said quietly. "I budget carefully." Catherine shook her head with theatrical sympathy. "It must be so difficult, raising a daughter alone on limited means. Sarah turned out wonderfully despite the challenges. You should be proud." There it was, the implication that I hadn't been enough, that Sarah succeeded in spite of me, not because of me. The main course arrived. Catherine made sure to announce that her entree cost $120. "Quality is worth the investment," she said, looking at my simpler dish. "One must maintain certain standards." As dinner progressed, Catherine continued her performance. "We've always ensured David had the best, the finest schools, international experiences, cultural education. When he and Sarah decided to marry, we helped them purchase their home. A $200,000 down payment. That's what family does. We invest in our children's futures." She paused, letting that number sink in. "Were you able to help Sarah with anything when they got engaged?" The question hung in the air like a knife. Everyone at the table tensed. "I gave what I could," I replied. "A small contribution." "How thoughtful," Catherine said. "It's truly the thought that counts, not the amount. Every bit helps." I felt the cold rage building inside me. Not hot and explosive, but icy and controlled. I breathed slowly, maintained my humble expression, and let Catherine continue revealing herself. Richard joined in. "Diana, we believe in being direct. Sarah is our daughter-in-law now, part of our family. We have certain expectations about the kind of environment she's exposed to. We want to ensure there are no unnecessary burdens on the young couple." "Burdens?" I repeated softly. "Financial obligations," Catherine clarified. "Family members who might need support. We want David and Sarah to build their life without worrying about others." Sarah looked at her plate, mortified. David stared into his wine glass. Neither defended me. "We'd like to make you an offer," Catherine continued. "We could provide you with a monthly allowance, say $1,000, to help you live more comfortably. In return, we'd simply ask that you respect Sarah and David's space. Perhaps limit your visits, Give them room to build their life together without interference. There it was. The bribe. They wanted to pay me to disappear from my daughter's life. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Catherine, I don't think. Let Diana decide for herself, Richard interrupted. She's an adult. She understands we're trying to help. I carefully placed my napkin on the table. I took a sip of water. The silence grew heavy as everyone watched me. When I spoke, my voice was different. No longer timid or small, but clear, firm, and cold. That's quite an offer, Catherine. Very generous. I just have a few questions to understand the arrangement properly. Catherine smiled, sensing victory. Of course, ask anything. You're offering $1,000 monthly for me to essentially vanish from my daughter's life. And you contributed $200,000 to their home purchase. Is that correct? That's accurate, Richard confirmed proudly. Interesting mathematics, I said. Tell me, Catherine, did all that money buy you something genuine? Did it purchase real love, or just obedience? Catherine's smile faltered. Excuse me. My tone sharpened. You've spent this entire evening discussing money. How much things cost. What you've spent. What you own. But you haven't asked once how I am. If I'm happy. If I need companionship. You've only calculated my worth, and apparently, I'm valued at $1,000 monthly. I think you're misunderstanding, Catherine started. No, I interrupted. I understand perfectly. Since I arrived, you've been measuring my value with your checkbook. And here's what I've discovered, Catherine. People who only speak about money are usually the ones who understand their true value least. Richard leaned forward. I think you're being unreasonable. Am I? I looked at him directly. Let me ask you something, Richard. Have you ever built anything from nothing? Ever worked without a safety net? Ever created wealth rather than simply managing what you inherited? His face reddened. My business accomplishments were built on family connections and inherited capital, I finished. I've done my research. Your father's company. Your family's investments. I'm not diminishing your work, but there's a difference between growing existing wealth and creating it from scratch. Catherine stood up, trembling. This is incredibly rude. Is it? I remained seated, calm. Was it rude when you asked if my salary was adequate? When you called me a burden? When you offered to pay me to disappear from my daughter's life? The room fell silent. I looked at Sarah. Sweetheart, I need to tell you something I should have told you years ago. I've been letting you believe I was struggling, that I was just an administrative assistant, that I barely made ends meet. But that's not true. Sarah's eyes widened. What do you mean? I mean that I earn $50,000 every month. I have for over 20 years. That's more than $12 million in gross income over my career. Not counting investments, bonuses, or stock options. The silence was absolute. Catherine's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. Richard's mouth opened slightly. David looked confused. And Sarah stared at me in complete shock. I am the regional finance director for Blackstone Investment Group. I continued. I oversee operations across 3 continents. I manage portfolios worth over $2 billion. I lead a team of 300 professionals. I make decisions every day that affect thousands of people's financial futures. Then why, Sarah's voice broke, why do I live modestly? I smiled at her gently. Because I wanted you to understand that worth isn't measured by possessions. Because I wanted you to develop your own identity, not live in my shadow. Because true wealth isn't displayed. It's quietly accumulated and wisely invested. I turned back to Catherine. That's why I dressed this way tonight. Why I pretended to be struggling. I wanted to see your true character. How you treat someone you thought had nothing. And you showed me exactly who you are. Catherine had gone pale. I don't believe you. I reached into my canvas bag and pulled out my phone. I opened my banking app and turned the screen toward her, showing my account balances. Her eyes widened as she saw the numbers. Believe it, I said quietly. If you're so wealthy, why didn't Sarah know? Richard demanded. Because unlike you, I don't define myself or my relationships by money. I don't use wealth to control people. I don't need to announce my net worth to feel important. I stood up. Let me tell you something neither of you has apparently learned. Money doesn't buy class. It doesn't buy genuine education. It doesn't buy empathy or character. You have wealth clearly, but you lack what truly matters. How dare you, Catherine whispered. I dare because I earned the right. I built my success through decades of work you can't imagine. I raised a daughter alone while climbing from entry-level to executive. I did it without anyone's help, without anyone's money, without anyone's connections. And I never once treated another human being the way you treated me tonight. I pulled out a black platinum card from my bag and placed it on the table. This is my corporate card. Unlimited spending limit. Please use it to pay for this dinner with a generous tip for the staff. Consider it a gift from the struggling woman you tried to bribe. Catherine stared at the card as if it might bite her. Sarah, I said, turning to my daughter, I'm leaving now. I love you and I'm proud of you. But I won't apologize for testing these people. They failed spectacularly. I walked toward the door. Sarah suddenly stood up. Mom, wait. She ran to me, tears streaming down her face. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because you needed to become yourself, not my child. You needed to work for your achievements, value your own success, develop your own identity. Money would have clouded all of that. I'm so sorry, Sarah sobbed. I'm so sorry for never asking, for assuming, for letting them treat you like that. I hugged her. You have nothing to apologize for. But now you have a decision to make about what kind of family you want to build. One based on authenticity, or one based on transaction. I kissed her forehead and walked out into the cool evening air. Behind me, I could hear raised voices. Sarah confronting David's parents, David trying to calm everyone down, Catherine's defensive protests. But I didn't look back. I called a car and waited at the end of the driveway. My phone buzzed with messages. One from Sarah. Asterisk, Mom, please talk tomorrow. I need to understand everything. Asterisk. One from an unknown number, Catherine. Asterisk, you deliberately deceived us. You manipulated this entire situation. Asterisk. I replied only to Sarah. Asterisk, of course, sweetheart. Anytime. Asterisk. The car arrived. As we drove away from the mansion, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Complete freedom. Freedom from pretending. Freedom from caring what people like Catherine and Richard thought. Freedom from hiding who I was. Over the following weeks, things shifted dramatically. Sarah came to visit me, sitting in my modest living room, seeing it with new eyes. Why this house, Mom? You could live anywhere. Because this is enough, I explained. Because I don't need to impress anyone. Because the size of your home doesn't determine the size of your life. Sarah and David set boundaries with his parents. No more financial control. No more judgmental comments. No more measuring people by their bank accounts. Catherine and Richard didn't take it well. They threatened to withdraw support, to revise their will, to cut David off. But Sarah and David stood firm. We're building our life on our terms, Sarah told them. Based on respect, not money. Months later, Sarah called me. Mom, Catherine asked to meet with you. She says she wants to apologize. What do you think I should do? I asked. I think you should hear her out, Sarah said. Not for her sake, but for yours. So you can close this chapter completely. So I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe, neutral ground. Catherine arrived looking smaller, somehow less imposing. Diana, she began. I've had time to think about that evening. About how I behaved. About what I assumed. She paused. I was wrong. What specifically were you wrong about? I asked, not making it easy for her. Everything. I judged you. I treated you as less than. I let my own insecurities about money dictate my behavior. I've spent my life believing wealth made me superior. And you? You shattered that illusion in one evening. Good, I said simply. That illusion needed shattering. I'm sorry, Catherine said. Truly. I'm trying to change. It's not easy, these patterns are deeply ingrained. But seeing Sarah stand up to us, seeing David question everything we taught him, I realized we raised him with the wrong values. I studied her face, looking for sincerity. I found it mixed with pride and discomfort. A woman genuinely trying to change but struggling against her nature. Apology accepted, I said. But Catherine, understand this. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean I'll ever fully trust you. It means I'm choosing not to carry anger. That's for my peace, not your comfort. She nodded. That's fair. We talked for another hour. Really talked without performance or pretense. She told me about her own childhood poverty, the desperation that drove her obsession with wealth, the fear of ever returning to that place. I shared my journey too, the struggles, the loneliness, the determination to provide for Sarah while building a career, the conscious choice to live below my means, to value substance over appearance. By the end, we hadn't become friends, but we'd reached an understanding. As I walked home that day, I realized something profound. The wealthiest thing I possessed wasn't in any bank account. It was the freedom to be myself, the peace that comes from living authentically, the relationship with my daughter, now deeper and more honest than ever. Real wealth, I'd learned, isn't what you have. It's what you don't need. It's not what you show, but what you keep private. It's not how others see you, but how you see yourself when you're alone. I never needed to pretend to be poor again. I'd seen what I needed to see. I'd learned what I needed to learn. And most importantly, I taught my daughter the most valuable lesson. That worth is internal. That character matters more than capital. That dignity cannot be purchased. And that, more than any amount in any account, made me truly rich. The end. I hope you enjoyed this story. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what resonated with you. If you'd like to support more stories like this, consider leaving a comment or subscribing. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Asterisk.